I'm so excited to speak to our guest today. She's a aesthetic injector that actually lives in the LA area. Please help me to introduce physician associate Emily Dowe.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. How are you? I'm so glad you were able to
Good.
join me.
Thank you. Me too.
All right, awesome, awesome. So let's get into it.
Hi, my name is Jonathan McLean, and I'm the founder and CEO of McLean Aesthetics.
Welcome to the dark side.
Let's go. Tell me a little bit. Let's rewind all the way back to the beginning, right? Tell
Mhm.
me, how did you choose? I know I get a lot of jobs and things that come in. They always say PA or NP, P or NP, because they're very comparable. When you were
Mhm.
going to school before you started, how did you choose the PA path over becoming an NP?
Well, I knew that I didn't want to be a nurse
Yeah,
because I kind of like the focus on treating and diagnosing, and I have an investigative personality.
yeah.
So once I found out that a PA existed, because this was a long time ago. And so I still don't think that PAs are, a lot of people don't know what we are compared to like nurses and doctors. But once I found out, I would look through the occupational outlook handbooks back in the day. This is like before the internet, to try to find like the occupation I thought would be suiting, because I was very passionate about wanting to love my job. Once I found out what a PA did, I thought, oh my God, did they like invent this this for me? Because it was like the perfect um, thing that I was looking for, which was I wanted to learn how to treat and diagnose, but I didn't necessarily want to go to become a doctor because of the lengthy schooling. But I also like the fact that we could always ask if we had questions. So that's why I became a PA, because I've also had read that PAs got they studied in a medical model more so. That's why I kind of chose it over NP, I guess, and also because most of the time, I think back in the day, maybe not now, you had to go to become an RN first before you became an NP, and I didn't really want to become an RN, if that made sense.
Okay, for sure, for sure. Now you're a PA, right? You go through school, you get your degree. Now you're a certified physician associate. Now you're in the market. What makes you want to go into aesthetics by chance? Tell me about that.
So I always had a passion for the skin and beauty. But back in the day, and in being an injector didn't exist. I
Mm,
graduated in like 95, like late 95, took the boards in 96 because it was towards the end of the year and then they had to like clear you to take the boards. So I always had a passion for dermatology, but it was so difficult trying to get a job in derm. So I didn't even realize. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of surgery, so I think that's why I chose dermatology. But I also wanted to make sure that within dermatology, I really like the aesthetic aspect of it. But I guess all dermatology, a lot of it is aesthetic. I mean, if somebody has acne, that's aesthetic. It's going to affect their looks. So I just had a passion for it.
super cool, super cool. And that's very interesting. I want to expound upon that more. So when you were graduating, being an aesthetic injector wasn't even a thing,
No.
correct?
Mm-mm. There were derm PAs, but they weren't as well known as PAs working in other specialties. And actually, when I was in the military, I actually called dermatology clinics to find out if they employed PAs before I went to become a PA.
Smart market
Yeah,
research, though. Very
yeah.
smart. So what at what point in your career did the kind of aesthetics kick in for you?
At what point? Well, it took a while, and it was really frustrating, and it was very challenging. because when I graduated, took the boards, it was like, we're talking like 19, I so apologize. I graduated from PA school in 2005 and took the boards in 2006. I don't know why I said 90 something. So this is back in 2006. There were very limited PAs working in derm, maybe a few PAs working in plastic surgery. So I wanted it right out of school, but finding a job with no experience in derm was really challenging in New York City, which is where I was living and where I'm originally from. It was very challenging.
Yeah.
Very, very challenging.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What made you keep going? Like, what was your motivation? Like, how? Because I get so many. The reason I'm asking this, because I get so many calls from providers, and they're saying the same thing. Like, it is so challenging. How do I get in? I'm feeling frustrated. And I always tell them, like, there's so many people like you that got in, and eventually their careers grown. So, what kind of advice could you give to them?
I would say keep going, don't give up. Because it was mere passion that kept me going. I just knew that this is what I wanted to do. And it was so frustrating because it's not like, going to school, right? You have a little bit more control over going to school. You apply to colleges. Eventually, somebody's probably going to accept you. But this was different because a lot of times derm PAs they work in private practices. So they're very selective on who they choose. It's not a hospital. If I was going for like some ortho specialty or primary care emergency, I probably would have found a job a lot easier. And I remember days where I would just like come home and just cry because I would just like interview with people and, maybe I'd get called back, but it never really led to something. And I just had, I had to take a job doing something that I was less passionate about, but I was still working as a PA. I was working in radiology. You just have to keep going. Don't give up.
Yeah.
It is very challenging. It's probably less challenging now because there are more of us. And then there's like this whole aesthetic injector thing. The aesthetics market, the non-invasive market has grown a lot.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's grown so much, and it's going to grow so much more. The world of a mid-level provider and a med spa, dermatology office, plastic surgery office is so much bigger than years and years ago. So for sure.
Yeah.
I would love to ask you, what did you find difference between the New York City market and now that you're in LA, the difference between both markets?
Huge, actually. I don't know about now because in New York, I haven't been to New York in so many years that I don't know what it's like. But when I was in New York, so my first derm job, I had a few derm jobs that were not very good fits. Let's say that. But once I got my foot in the door, it was a lot easier to then get another derm job working for a practice that I thought was more of a better fit. So I'll take you back to what year was it? 2008. I finally got a practice that I thought was a great fit that offered medical and cosmetic dermatology that would train me, that would give me good training. Because a lot of times back in the day, I'm not sure if it's the case now, a lot of times I feel like dermatologists would hire PAs to sometimes work as a glorified medical assistant and not really treat and diagnose. I worked there for 6 years, and I will tell you the culture when I first, back in 2008, which might be like less of the case now, was a lot of the dermatologists and plastic surgeons were really territorial. They were upset that dermatologists and plastic surgeons were wanting to get into their field to do this as well. And they were really territorial. They spoke out a lot about it. And that made it really difficult. But I worked there Connecticut and New York, Connecticut for 6 years. And so when I decided to move to LA, there was a huge difference. There were so many more job opportunities in LA. That is a big difference. New York is very much more academic, very professional. And in LA, so when I looked at the job market, right, like on Craigslist or Indeed, it was way better in LA. So New York is very academic, very professional, upscale. LA, there's like a med spa on every corner. It's less academic in a sense than the Northeast is. And it's like more of the Wild West out here. Like anybody can open up a spa. And they're less concerned with where you graduate from and more concerned with like social media, for instance, is bigger out here. There's a lot more opportunity here in LA. It was actually really refreshing to me to see when I first moved here, to see nurses and nurse practitioners and PAs own their own med spas. And they were big med spas. And some of them treated celebrity clients. So the title, your title didn't hold as much here as it did in New York. Graduating from an Ivy League school, things like that. It's just like totally different here. So there's a big difference.
Yeah, no, it's super cool. It's super cool. I can agree with that. I recruit for both like the LA and the New York market, and it is totally different areas.
Yeah.
So no, I can definitely agree with that. Definitely agree with that. Tell me, what trends are in the in the LA market right now?
Trends?
Yeah, what trends are you seeing right now for aesthetic market?
I mean, I don't know if I keep up that much with the trends. I'm not sure. I mean, I know there are trends that come and go, like the foxtail brow thing, threads, but I think threads are here to stay now, I guess. I guess, concern myself as much with trends. I do think that people are starting to realize slowly, they're starting to realize what overfilled lips look like.
Yeah.
And maybe wanting to go for more of the natural look, less obvious look. But I don't know if that's just here in LA or all over. It's because I watch a lot of YouTube as well. So I know that people such as myself have made videos about like, you know, maybe dissolving your lips if you have unnatural looking filler. But I still think that the differences in beauty are still a little different. Like here in LA, they overdo a lot. Lashes, like I came out here and I was just like, damn. In New York, for instance, if somebody gets hair extensions or a weave, let's say, they kind of want it to look like it's their own. Here in LA, it was just like mermaid hair. It's like, wow, lashes that are just like out there. Makeup that's just like, and I guess, you know, a lot of people can wear very heavy makeup versus more natural looking makeup, but in LA they tend to be on this side of the spectrum with things in general, like boobs, but like it's overdone here. Yeah,
with so many providers there, and it's because it's so like normal to have so much aesthetics around. How do you kind of differentiate yourself against everybody else?
That's a really good question. It's something that I have had to learn, and I'm still learning.
Yeah.
I really didn't even know, like it was just such a different monster working because I choose to work in aesthetics. I know that I could go to a hospital and get a job and get paid well and not have to ever be on social media and not have to worry about anything. I didn't even know what branding meant until I moved to LA. I was like, what is branding? I've had to learn all that. And I do think that here they do a really good job of that. in LA, just like branding and social media. So I had to figure out, and it took me a while, like what does differentiate me? And I realized that I really didn't like doing I really don't like injecting people where our concept of beauty is different. And I realized that I didn't want to give people unnatural looking lips, even though they wanted it. And
Yeah.
even though at the time where I was working, the practice wanted me to do it because that's what the patient wanted. And I realized slowly and slowly, like, this is my thing, natural beauty. And after reading about the underlying psychology of beauty and understanding what the difference is in giving somebody natural looking results versus unnatural looking results and the importance of that, it really helped me kind of zone in on my brand and what I like to do. And then when you understand that, then you can kind of target the people who are looking for those results. So it took me a while, but I like to study beauty in depth, the philosophy of beauty, the underlying psychology of beauty, why it's so impactful, why it's so important. So
That's super, super interesting for multiple reasons. But I think the number one reason is I've been studying a lot of like body dysphoria around surrounding this industry.
mhm.
Personally, I feel like it's connected, right? I feel like a lot of times, sometimes it is a problem with some patients and they just want more and more and more. How do you deal with that kind of if you have a patient that comes in and maybe you start to see those signals and things like that?
Well, the good thing is that when you brand yourself and people find you and seek you out
Yeah.
because of your philosophy of beauty, you are only getting the people who want natural looking results. So it's a lot easier than when I worked at the med spas and they were just coming to the med spa and they didn't know who in God's name was treating them. Then I would have to, it's difficult sometimes because patients get mad and upset if you don't give them what they want. And there are a lot of people who have lip filler blindness, for instance, and they don't realize that their lips are already over injected and then they want you to add more to it. So it's a lot of counseling when it does happen. It's a lot of counseling, I guess. And sometimes just knowing like I'm not going to do that, but this provider may do that. I can refer you there.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. Definitely makes sense.
Mhm.
Is it important to have, I guess, be a part of the community and have that community-ness with the people that inject also in your area?
Yeah, I think it's really, really important to do that. Yeah, it's definitely because you feel I feel very alone a lot of times because that I don't have that whole team work mentality like as if I worked in a hospital. A lot of times practices are small practices. So I think that is really important. And that's why I kind of try to go to conferences. And I have a few like injector friends that, we'll meet up every once in a while. Colleague that I work with in one of my practices where we talk about things. But yeah, that's really important, especially because in aesthetics, you'll find that you're not going to work with like a large amount of a big team like you would in a hospital.
What were some of the challenges, I guess, stop working at a med spa, it's kind of working on your own?
I'm not completely on my own. I work in two practices right now. So one of them I am kind of on my own. People come to see me. They don't refer me anyone. It's kind of like those salon places where, every person has their own room per se, but it's way bigger than like a salon suite. It's not a salon suite or anything. And I also work in another practice where people come to see me there, but a lot of times they feed me people in the practice too. Trying to grow by yourself can be challenging.
Yeah.
There are a lot of hurdles because you can go to all the classes you want. You can be the best injector in the world, but if you don't have patience, you don't have a practice. So most of my time is dedicated towards making content for YouTube so that people can be educated about procedures. They can learn how the procedures benefit them, if they're a good candidate, how it works, all of that, like providing educational content on YouTube. That's how most of my patients find me right now. And yes, of course, some are word of mouth and referrals, but a lot of it now is YouTube. And so when YouTube isn't doing great and views are low, it can be challenging.
Wow, that's very interesting because I talked to so many providers and none of them are using YouTube at all.
I know. Yeah. It's took me years. It's still a struggle, but years to figure out to leave other platforms alone that I really never really love doing. Like I have a love-hate relationship with Instagram.
Yeah.
And it's people will say too, it's impossible to grow on Instagram. You could grow in the first years, but now it's impossible to grow. Everybody says you have to do TikTok. TikTok's just not my thing. The reason why I like YouTube is because my content is good. It's evergreen on there, and it's a search engine, and also I like long form content. So it's like I like putting in the work to create a really good video, and that video it's good for a long time, for a year sometimes. Your content can be good. So you have to, I feel, find what platform works for you. Like sometimes I can't even bring myself to post on Instagram. I don't even like doing it. I like doing stories, but not, they went from being a platform for posting pictures to now they're competing with TikTok and only reels grow you. It's constantly changing.
Would you say that how much of your client base is based off YouTube, you would say?
I would say that's how most people find me.
Wow.
Yeah, most people find me on YouTube. I haven't had many people say they find me on Instagram.
Wow. What about word of mouth?
Word of mouth is great. However, it's just slow because a lot of times if this was hair that I was doing or makeup, for instance, or lashes, people don't have as much of I guess, issue with telling their friends that they do those things. But when it comes to cosmetic injections, I don't think people speak as freely. Word of mouth is great, but it can be slow sometimes. And I'm not a person, I've never done the ads really. So I just kind of want to do the more organic, natural thing, I guess.
No, it's super cool. Super, super, very cool. I'm sure people will try that out because I don't think many people are using that, but you took a default or a deficiency that you found in yourself and made it a positive and something else, a different channel that you can go through. So
yeah,
very, very cool. Excellent, excellent. So tell me a little bit about conferences and educational things. I know you mentioned a lot of education, right? What do you read or how do you learn in your spare time? What are some exciting things that people can pick up? Anything that they can learn from?
I try to go to one big conference a year, aesthetic conference. Either it was the VCA, and I love that, the Vegas Cosmetic Conference, or VC. Am I pronouncing it right? VCC maybe. But then after COVID, they changed up the program, and they don't offer as many CMEs. I used to think that was the best conference for the best bang for your buck because you got so many different lectures, but then they just slowly changed it. This year I went to, I forget what it's called. It's the LAMCA. It's one in LA. And that's probably the second best compared to what the VCC used to be. There are a lot of conferences now, more so than when I first started. And the Aesthetic Extender Symposium I went to one year. And the EMR that I use, Aesthetic Record, has a conference that I think they just did this weekend. I didn't go to it. There's a lot of virtual events, especially since I don't tend to like the virtual ones as much as the in-person conferences, but there's so much out there now. You can even learn from YouTube. You can learn a lot from YouTube as well, which is 100% free as well. There's always articles too. Like before I do a video on a subject, I research that subject by just going on Google and just typing in whatever it is I'm looking for. So there's a lot of free tools out there, as well as like conferences that you pay for.
Nice. Is there any podcasts that you can add on to that?
I mean, I don't really listen to a lot of podcasts. I do more YouTube.
Gotcha.
And I guess you could say that could be a podcast as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. Education is super important. I always say, no matter what field you're in, you want to be the best,
Totally.
the expert. So you got to continue to educate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about cadaver courses, and are they necessary?
I actually haven't taken a cadaver course. I think that they're really. Oh no, I did. I took one a long time ago. From what was it called? One of the palette workshops. But I thought we were going to get our own cadaver and share it with people, but it was just, I was kind of surprised to find out it was the instructor who was just dissecting and you were just watching. And I feel like a lot of times we'll forget that. So I think it's really important, of course, anatomy is, but there was this it's actually a virtual based cadaver platform that I discovered one year called, what is it called? A Face app, I think it's called. They're out of Australia. If I would probably prefer to do that one because I would have access to it all the time versus when you take a course, you pay all this money and it's just like, you're probably going to forget a lot of information anyway. If you do that one, I think it's called Complete Face. If you do that one, then you're always going to have access to the anatomy on there and they break down the different areas of the face. So I would probably do that one. Like I eventually would love to get that app.
Super cool. I always get a question from new injectors. They're like, should I spend all this money on conferences or trainings? What would you kind of suggest for that?
I mean, so new injectors who don't work in the field.
Right. Yeah.
It's so difficult, right? Because I think that maybe at least trying to go to once a year is great because they can always meet people at those conferences. And network with people at some of the booths. Like there are I think 2 agencies that help new people come and get into aesthetics, like new providers and nurses get into aesthetics. I know one is like the Titan agency and the other one I think is called Job Snob. So there's so many courses. Sometimes I haven't done it lately because I have less time because I'm trying to put more content on YouTube, but I would train at Empire Medical Training. I was a trainer for them, for people who were thinking about getting into aesthetics. I think it's important, but at the same time, I understand there's only so much you can do if you don't have a job in aesthetics. You can go and you can take a course, but if you're not in there the next few weeks injecting people on a somewhat consistent basis, you kind of will lose the skill in a sense. So the best advice I could give was advice that this one doctor gave me when I was so frustrated because I just moved. I hadn't even fully moved to LA. And I really wanted to let go of the medical derm and concentrate just on being an injector because I feel like at some point, jack of all trades, master of none. And I felt like the reason why I got out of derm and I only choose to do certain specific procedures is because I kind of want to master these procedures. And if I'm so caught up in psoriasis patients and acne, skin cancer, I'm not going to feel as confident of an injector because I'm not doing as much injecting as I want to. So the best advice was advice that this one doctor gave me. You might not find every single thing that you want in one job, but if you can take a part-time job, if somebody with somebody who's willing to give you a chance doing what you want to do for one day a week, that's a start. Then you find a job with somebody, another place who maybe want to hire you, maybe another day a week, and eventually you are going to build up your skill and you're going to get more opportunities to do that more full time. So you might have to take a job, doing lasers when what you want to do is inject. You have to kind of start somewhere, get your foot in the door, start slow. Even if you get it one day a week, at least that's better than nothing. And sometimes that's better than waiting around for the perfect job with somebody who's just going to say, I think with me, I wanted somebody to I was so used to getting a job like in New York. They don't really have a lot. That's another big difference between LA and New York. In New York, when you got a derm job or you got a job as an injector, they hire you full time. You get salary and benefits and maybe commission. Here in LA, you find so many people working in different places and people don't care. Non-competes do not hold up here in the state of California. And that's one thing that I love, because in New York and Connecticut it was totally different. So that was a big adjustment for me, because I think when I first came out here and I had gotten a job with a practice, but they actually offered me full time. But at that point I was kind of scared to move to LA. So that's my big advice, is sometimes you don't get everything you want, but if you can just get a part-time job or a temporary gig, then you're still, on the right path.
Yeah, no, I can definitely understand. Just go slowly until you get
Mm-hmm. And sometimes it means giving up security. So you have to understand, is your passion outweigh the security that you might want, expecting somebody to give you a full-time job with a secure pay? And that's a big thing that I had to give up, was security.
I think that I'm glad you brought that point up, honestly, because that is a huge thing. When you're working in aesthetics, a lot of times there is no benefits. There's 1099, things of that nature. So I tell a lot of providers, and many of them don't understand, and some of them do get it. But if you want something, you have to go after it. Like you just said, you have to give up. It's a give and take. And you're going to gain a lot, but you got to give something too. So
yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, because a lot of times the practices in aesthetics, when you're taking clients that go through insurance because they have medical problems, you're always going to be busy. But in aesthetics, if that practice doesn't have patients, they're not getting paid and they can't pay you. So I understand why. It's not like they're just being mean. You don't have security in this business unless you have patients walking through your door. And that's why there are some practices that were open for years and then they closed down.
Yeah, I agree. I can definitely agree with that. Well, tell me, I always like to ask providers, tell me one highlight of your career thus far.
Highlight of my career?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Let me
One
think.
moment that you're like super proud of.
Probably just being able to give up security, because it wasn't easy for me.
Yeah.
And making the move to LA. I didn't have a job when I moved here. I got offered a position, but I wasn't ready. I turned it down because I wasn't ready to move to LA. So then when I came out here, I had to take the risk of coming out here with no job, because it really is difficult, because it is all on the other side of the country. I'm probably proud of that I took the risk coming out here with no job. I actually didn't even have a place to stay when I first moved here too, because that fell through. The guy that I was supposed to be renting from just kind of bailed. So it was rough, but I guess it all worked out.
Yeah. I mean, that had to be very stressful with all of that stuff going on. And I know
Yeah.
being in the industry is stressful enough. You know, you got to text patients sometime after hours. There's a lot of things that come with it, not just what we see on
Yeah,
TV.
I know.
How do you deal with stress, or what are some techniques or some things that you do to kind of relieve stress?
Let's see. Probably go to the gym.
Yeah, that's a good
Sometimes
one.
talk to people. And it usually just passes, but it can be, frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For people,
Going to the beach, I think, is also like I live near the beach, so I think there's always something so healing about like going to the beach. And then just always putting in perspective, like I had a rough day this morning because my YouTube views have been low the past few weeks. And usually when that happens, I'm not getting as much inquiries, but then I think to myself, okay, put this in perspective. I have a friend who is like dealing with breast cancer right now,
yeah.
and also just realizing like, okay, things happen for a reason. Maybe this gives me more time to work on content for new videos. But it can be rough sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, like you just said, changing that mindset in your head that you're living in the moment, you know what I mean? And really understand that it's not going to last forever. But in this rough patch, what can I do to sustain or kind of help myself so when it does come back, I can be even stronger, even better, even greater?
Yeah.
For new people that are coming, or just people that are coming from, like, let's say they're coming from the ER or hospital or different fields, what are some benefits and some cons of this industry that you can think of?
The benefit is I feel like it's if you're really passionate about this, it's really rewarding to make people, when they look in the mirror and they see that they look better, they feel better. It's fun, it's artistic. I can you can let your artistic and creativity side shine through where you probably couldn't do that as much in standard medicine. Those are the benefits, but the challenges are just what we discussed. There's not really security. There's not a lot of times you're not going to get benefits, and I feel social media is a must unless you have a lot of money to just spend on ads, or somebody to help you with ads. And social media is a must. Wouldn't even have. I don't. Jonathan, I didn't even have Facebook before. I was a very private person, so I had to kind of get over the hurdle of my privacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I definitely can agree with you. Social media is a must, literally. It's just how you connect. Or if you belong to a lot of groups, say you are like a part of a yoga group and your fitness group and all these groups, then it becomes a little easier to kind of just say, hey, come over here, hey, try it out, things like that. But one way or another, it's basically the same thing, just in person, like same thing. Are there some people on social media that you love to follow, that you engage with, that you would recommend other people to follow?
Yeah, I can tell you for Insta, I really find Dr. Subio's posts to be really entertaining and funny. Injector Dowe usually has really good posts as well. Pia Nicola has like really informative posts, and she's a trainer as well. For YouTube, Dr. Tim Pierce I think that's what his channel's pretty much focused on, is helping people in the aesthetic field. His YouTube channel, I'm not sure if you've heard of it. But I feel like other YouTube channels you can follow and it can be informative as well. Victorian Cosmetic Institute on YouTube, I like their stuff. Dr. Gary Linkoff, I sometimes look at his videos. Quove Studio for the actual importance of beauty is really interesting as well on YouTube, as well as I guess my channel.
What's your channel name? Shout it out right now.
Natural Injector.
Mm.
Yeah. And I've actually had other people in the field say, I had my patient watch your chin filler video. And then they understood the importance and how powerful your chin is and how it impacts your beauty. And they decided to come in and do it. And then they'd show me their results, which are like amazing results.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Is there any areas on the face that you don't inject? And if so, why?
Yes. I haven't ventured into the forehead. Sorry, the forehead. I know some people inject foreheads. Noses, I would love to get more comfortable with noses. I do my nose and I'll do a
Really?
few people's noses, but you won't see me posting about it or writing a video yet about it, because it is a risky area. And so I feel like I would love to take more courses on it before I venture into that. So I think it's just like foreheads, and I'll do noses, but I won't do them very, very frequently. I won't, put out there that I do them because I'm not really looking for that type of patient yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the aesthetic market has really grown since really conception. Like there's sexual wellness now that is targeted through aesthetics. There's Botox in the hands and all over the body.
Mhm.
That's super cool. Have you tried any of those things so far, or is that something in LA that's trending right now? Or
Well, I mean, I did do Botox in the hands for hyperhidrosis, if that's
yeah,
what you're referring to. When I worked back in Durham, I actually did a lot of hyperhidrosis, and at one point I was and you asked about hands, and then sexual health. I don't do much with that, like the O shot or things like that, because I feel like that would probably be better suited for like a gynecologist or somebody more familiar with that anatomy. But one thing that I'm realizing is the importance of hormone replacement therapy for a lot of people. Because while I'm working on the outside of your face, when a woman and men, get to a certain age, but more women, the loss of certain hormones can really have an effect on their skin tissue elasticity. And I think it's really important to eventually look into doing that. And that's something that I think more and more I'm becoming more interested in, because if, you're helping the outside, but then, maybe they have more bone loss or loss of elasticity because they're not replacing the loss of estrogen that happens with menopause, for instance. You know, I think that they're important to look into as well as like you mentioned, sexual health. Like, it's not like we wake up one day and our hormones have just dropped. It gradually drops since in our 20s and 30s. So, I think a lot more people are starting to understand the benefits of hormone replacement therapy for men and women.
yeah. Down here in South Florida, it's huge. I almost feel like every practice is joint with HRT or
Yeah,
some type of like hormone replacement.
that's
So yeah,
great. You
it's
mean
becoming
they'll refer to other places, or they have like a separate part of their practice that deals with that?
a separate part of their practice that deals with it. So I think personally, it will expand all over the U.S. very
Yeah.
soon.
Oh, that's good. That's interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that because I definitely want to learn more about that and eventually look into it for myself.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
One of my last questions I wanted to ask is, I know it's LA, right? And there's a lot of celebrities that live there. Does that happen? Like, do patients come in and say, "Hey, I want to look like this celebrity," or "I want to look like this person"? If so, which person do you get the most?
I don't get a lot of my patients wanting to look like a celebrity. I think those might be more the people who might have more of
Yeah.
those concerns, those BDD maybe. So I wish I could tell you. I mean, of course, we know like Kylie Jenner totally set off but that was years ago. But then I think people realized like, oh, her lips were overdone. So I don't really get a lot of that actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. At least everybody's still, because you have that natural brand. That means your branding's working.
Guess so. Or maybe people realize like it's unless you kind of look somewhat similar, have similar features to that celebrity. I mean, I had one patient who somewhat actually had similar features to Emily Ratajkowski, and she wanted, to enhance her lips. That I think is okay if you kind of look like them, but if you don't really look like the celebrity, yeah.
How do you get that image that's in their head, I guess, and translate that to your head to give them what they want?
What do you mean?
So when patients come in, I'm sure they have an image of what they want to look like, but a lot of times as humans, we can't really verbalize that, I would say.
Mhm.
So how do you kind of like get whatever's in their head and kind of set their expectations, I guess?
I guess as long as you're coming in wanting to look like the best version of you,
Yeah.
and you have realistic expectations and understand that I can't, if you're starting out with really thin lips, I can't give you Angelina Jolie lips. It's not going to look natural.
Yeah.
So I think because of my branding, most of the people that I have understand that already. So most of my patients want to look natural. So I don't really have as much of those, I guess, issues or concerns.
Nice. Perfect. That sounds great. Well, thank you, Emily, so much for joining me and talking more about aesthetics and the LA area. Tell everybody where they can find you and what you got planned next.
You can find me on Natural Injector on YouTube and Natural Injector as well on Instagram. And look out for more YouTube videos.
Sounds good. Until next time. Bye.
Bye, John. Thanks.